Hello and welcome everyone to Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. I am your host, Nina Joshi. Have a couple of quick announcements before we bring on our guest for today. We have our Breakthrough Alliance Challenge. The applications go through the end of this month, so make sure that you apply for this challenge. We also have the Versali Challenge that's specifically focused on menopause with a $50,000 cash prize total in prizes. So it's going to be a really amazing event. Make sure that you apply to that. And we also have our October symposium that is coming up on Halloween at the end of the month. And with that, because one of our participants for the symposium is also our guest for today, welcome back to Dr. Glennis Mehra, who is the Director of Biolabs at NYU Langone. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Glennis.
Thank you for having me. It's a thrill to be here again.
Yes, can't wait to dive in and continue the conversation. But I think, Dr. Glennis, maybe a good place to start is if you could kind of reintroduce yourself to our participants and share a little bit more about your background, your journey, really in the biotech sector that has led you to where you are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thanks for the HitLab team for inviting me. Always love these conversations and diving right in. So my background, as some of you know, is pretty unconventional. So I come out of Columbia University graduate program, PhD in neurobiology and behavior. There I transitioned out of academia somewhat into the technology transfer office at Columbia University as a technology licensing officer. From there, I thought I knew enough to start my own company, which was a drug discovery platform I created for the Indian market. Had to pivot that business. Clearly was way over my head initially, but then pivoted into a model that worked for the market. It matched the market needs at the time, and actually exited that company. We had a successful exit, so went through all of the hurdles and heartaches of raising, growing the team, and also selling our baby. And moving on to whatever was next. What was next was 2 years of a wonderful vacation and parenting and definition, and then moved back to the US, in which I was lucky enough to be recruited by a strategy consulting firm, particularly focused on innovation, translation, acquisition, and scaling and growth. And that is where I think a lot of my experience that drove me into the opportunity of being the executive director of Biolabs came from. I transitioned into Biolabs from consulting during the pandemic when consulting wasn't really a viable profession because we couldn't travel. I had clients in Germany, Asia, California, and so I was up at all hours trying to remotely manage projects, and my team was in Florida, and so it just did not make sense as a working mom and managing 3 kids. So when Biolabs called, I answered, and it's been a wonderful opportunity and an amazing community that I've been at the helm of since.
I love that. And we love unconventional career paths here. So you fit the bill. And that's incredible, I think, just to be able to have this wealth of experience. And I'm so curious, you have been a founder kind of, in that role, you've been in academia, you've been a consultant. How have all of those different roles, those different positions kind of informed your approach to managing at Biolabs, if they have?
Oh, for sure. I think it's kind of interesting. It's like when you see a menu and you get to have all of it. So
Yeah.
with Biolabs opportunity, I saw for the first time in my career to use all the bits and pieces, all of the struggles, all of the triumphs I bring to bear in my day-to-day management of this community as a user of innovation, as a patient impacted by innovation, as a licensing officer, commercializing innovation, as a founder and operator of business, also as an investor. So I also angel invested for some time, and also as a strategy consultant. All of that I use to optimize the product, to optimize the service and the operations, and hopefully to bring value to not just our community and our members, but also for the wider New York ecosystem. For those who are not familiar with biolabs, we're actually an incubator for early stage companies. Primarily, we focus on companies that are in the therapeutic space, but we also host quite a lot of other companies, including those in medtech, computation, as well as consumer products and sustainability. So we have companies in the sustainability realm in ag tech, creating biosynthetic materials, as well as, our traditional oncology therapeutic platforms as well.
Absolutely. I love how you were kind of first describing, the menu that you have, and all of these experiences really are just like tools in a toolkit. So it is nice that you are, seems like, able to really leverage a lot of them in all of the different roles that you have. And I think on that note, as you were describing a little bit more about kind of biolabs, can you share, some of the features of biolabs, of the facility that, really make it this amazing space for life science companies?
I think I like to describe it more as a community based on a foundation of service. So yes, we are a facility. We have four walls that we manage and we keep the lights on. But I think the true value is the proximity that founders and their teams have to each other. And so one of the great values we have, and something that I've asked everybody to hone in on, is the value of efficiency. So we actually provide lots and lots of resources, millions of dollars of equipment. So companies don't have to purchase, they don't have to use their credit to lease or borrow equipment or purchase equipment. We also have support services to make sure that we're all in compliant with local ordinances and OSHA and rules and regulations. We have teams that help train and troubleshoot, all inclusive in the cost of membership and the benches. And so we're also in a tax-free zone. So we've got capital efficiency, we've got operating efficiency, and also we have efficiency of network. So when you become a member, you suddenly have a network of like-minded scientists, professionals who you can create relationships, community, and also strategic partnerships with. And we have founder circles that actually takes that model and puts it in a more robust mode where it's just the founders. There are no vendors. It's myself and the founders. We have beverages and meals together and discuss and debate the challenges and opportunities. And they share their investor networks. They share, challenges and techniques in recruiting, et cetera. And so that's the real, I think, opportunity and value that we bring is just those efficiencies, the efficiency, again, of operation, capital, and networking.
Wow, I love that. And I really liked how you were honing in on the level of efficiency. And it seems like even collaboration. And I'm kind of curious, I know you mentioned, the founder circle, and you kind of have some specific events. When you're kind of as this managing role, how are you kind of thinking about fostering collaboration among startups in your co-working space, or just in your broader community, right? Is it something that you found to be pretty, I think, innately there with the startup community, or is there a framework or something that you're kind of actively doing to kind of bring startups, founders groups together?
Yeah, it's not innately there. Most of our founders are scientists, like myself, a recovering scientist. We are very, I don't want to generalize, but by and large, we find, and myself included, people who are very reticent, who are shy, who are not going to go out and introduce themselves to people who are new or unknown to them. And so we do create networking events. We have happy hours. We have happy hour breakfast sometimes. We have sip and paint. We have all of these events that hopefully bring people together, have them sit side by side, even though they're not familiar with each other, and forces conversations. The other thing that I do is sometimes say, hey, you two need to be talking to each other. If I think that there's a great opportunity for collaboration, I usually take it upon myself and force an introduction. And that's something that I think has worked well. We, even at times when I think companies may be competing, potentially with each other, I force them to have the conversation and I mediate and make sure that there's no significant issues there.
I really like that. And I really like how, of course, it's great to provide the open space, but it seems like you're really intentional about fostering, about bringing people together. And I think just the fact that there's so much thought behind a lot of those events, I mean, that's incredible. So I really like that. That seems to be something that you and Biolabs are prioritizing, kind of that close-knit community.
Yeah. And there is a curation. So companies do have to apply. And we generally are looking for companies that would be a good fit. So for example, I mentioned not everybody is a lab-based company, even though a lot of the operational value is in the lab. But we actually accept tech companies, computation companies, sustainability companies that have no need for labs, but would be a great community addition in terms of their ways of being and doing. So for a sustainability company that's doing high throughput screening, while that may not have specific relevance to a therapeutic drug development, being able to program a high throughput robot is something they have an expertise in that could also benefit some of the founders in the therapeutic space. And that's just one example.
Absolutely. And for folks on the call that are as equally interested and wanting to know about how do you even be a part of this community, Dr. Glennis, can you share a little bit more about kind of like the application process and some of the qualities that you really look for in founders and startups that you kind of choose to bring into the network?
So I generally recommend people just engage. We have not only events for our particular community housed within our four walls, our membership, but we also host, apologies for the soundtrack of the sirens in the background. But we also host events for our ecosystem, and we do those in collaboration with other groups such as HitLab. We do those in collaboration with student and postdoctoral groups throughout the city, and other founders in the digital space and tech space. So I would say get on our mailing list. If you go to our website, biolabs.io, just join our mail list, be alerted of our programming. And if you're interested in applying, it starts with a conversation, reaching out and just saying, hey, I'd like to learn more. We generally, I would say we generally do not accept everyone to go through the process because I don't like wasting people's time. So it starts with a quick conversation, making sure it's a good fit and that what ultimately may happen in the end through the application process is going to be worthy of your time.
I love that. Is it on a rolling basis, Dr. Glennis, or are there specific application windows for Biolabs?
Now we have a selection committee, which is sometimes intimidated. People get intimidated, but they're the sweetest individuals. So our selection committee is comprised of members of NYU Langone, executive team, also BMS, business development team, as well as Mission Biocapital and the life science group from the Economic Development Council, which is coming out of the mayor's office. And so it's a pretty high wattage selection committee. And so I think what I generally recommend people do is focus on making sure that they're ready to present, and then making sure that when they are actually presenting, they're putting their best foot forward.
I love that. And I think you bring up a really good point around Biolabs, but, just these kind of accelerators, incubators more broadly, for any founders on the call that are really interested in joining either Biolabs or a similar type of incubator or accelerator, what are some of the things that, they can do to prepare? Are there particular things that, you're going to need a strong pitch deck or et cetera? Is there kind of any kind of particular things that could immediately, they should be thinking about?
Yeah, I would say making sure that you have a strong pitch deck and that your story is as tight as possible. It has to be something in which can travel very easily without you being there. If you need to talk through your pitch deck in order for somebody to understand it, then it's not doing its job. You do not know when you're making the presentation what mode the audience, a specific member of the audience is going to be in. Is that person having a bad day? Are they distracted by meetings, etc.? And so you want to make sure, number one, that your pitch deck is a solid pitch deck that can travel without you in a non-confidential manner, obviously. And number two, that you have a strong value proposition. Most people start with problem solution, but if there are many other companies having a similar approach addressing your problem, highlighting what is unique. And I know everyone does like the standard competitive slide, but if there are many people in your space, just having a grid with the check boxes isn't enough. You've got to hone in on what's unique about you and why you will win.
Right.
And so those are the presentations I think that generally are more successful.
That is very, very informative. Thank you, Dr. Glennis. I also want to ask you, I know we've been talking so much about biolabs and the amazing community that you've built, that you've fostered. But I'm also so curious because you are really seeing, like you're able to see broadly, but also in the weeds with every kind of individual startup or company. Are there any particular or pressing, opportunities or challenges that you're seeing? I think more broadly in the biotech sector. Is there kind of anything that's kind of coming top of mind in terms of just challenges or things to kind of look out for, things that you are seeing?
I'm seeing there finally be a way of addressing the neurological space.
Oh, interesting.
I think I'm a recovering neuroscientist myself, so I'm slightly biased on this issue. But for so long, we did not have the diagnostic tools. We did not have the biomarkers. We didn't have the therapies to work beyond psychopharmaceuticals. And even there, it was this nebulous, this nebulous case where there weren't sufficient biomarkers even to measure outcomes in a quantitative manner and a scalable manner. But now, because of technology, because of sensors, because of all of the devices, frankly, that are available, I think we're finally getting a handle on validating markers, biomarkers, with what's actually happening in the brain. And I think that's going to make advances in terms of therapeutic and rehabilitation development just rocket to the moon. I'm really, really excited to see what happens in that sphere. And I think there's also an opportunity to, what I'd really like to see, which I think is a gigantic white space if anyone's listening, is there are a lot of, with tech and with AI, the hurdles for starting a company and creating a unique value proposition is coming down. So the moat that everyone talks about, the competitive moat, is shrinking. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity to coalesce, to actually index all of the new companies, tech companies in the healthcare and medical sphere that are coming to the fore and helping founders and helping investors identify what's truly unique besides an IP search. Because as we know, most of these companies are not filing patents. When you're developing an algorithm, it's not necessarily going to be reflected in a patent filing. And so there's what I see as a curator of early stage companies is a lot of things that are kind of the same. And it breaks my heart to say that these founders are not necessarily wasting their time, but there could be opportunities to collaborate and merge early on in the process and not waste capital or energy.
I love that. That's like even its own like AI spin-off of biolabs, maybe, where there is kind of that way to do that. But that's so interesting. And are you seeing I mean, obviously there's applications everywhere for AI, but are there kind of some key ways that you're seeing AI be applied specifically in like the biotech sector? Is it more for kind of like clinical trials? Is it more for QA? Are there any particular areas you see it?
So I think when people speak about AI, there needs to be some clarification of what we're talking about. So AI has been around. I'm now aging myself, but it's been around for 2 decades. So machine learning algorithms, has been there. And I think that's now captured the hearts and imagination of people. Thanks to OpenAI and language models. But language models are not the AI that's revolutionizing healthcare. It's just advancements in machine learning algorithms. And so I see where that's taking us in is just an ability to go through a lot more data, collect more data, and make sense of it, to identify correlations and potentially more clearly map causal relationships that can then be interrogated for drug discovery, for therapeutics, for healthcare, med tech, et cetera. And so I think what AI is doing, or AI, as I prefer to say, machine learning algorithms are doing, is actually creating more work for all of us, more opportunities for discovery, and more shots on goal in terms of life extension and improving quality of life.
Absolutely. And it's so true. I love how you were kind of really referring to AI, like it's going through a rebranding process, but it's been there. So that is very, very true.
And I just wanted to add that it is making a difference in terms of clinical trials. It's making a difference in terms of pretty much every aspect of innovation, development, growth, and translation. We can now segment populations of patients. We can now create segments of biomarkers that we couldn't in the past, and so it's a great boon. Maybe too much. Maybe it'll be too much information, but right now I'm saying it's a get to have.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Glennis, I want to make sure that we get to some of the questions that we have from our audience. The first question is, are there any opportunities to participate in biolabs online, or do you kind of need to be in person in New York for that?
Yeah, we used to have an online seminar similar to this, where we would have panelists online. We haven't done that in a while. I think we focused more on getting people more engaged in person to start creating those relationships. But if our team's bandwidth permits, we will start doing more online programming. But thank you for that question. I think definitely something to put on everyone's radar here.
I love that. And then the next question that we have is there a fee to be a part of biolabs?
Yes, there is. We are heavily subsidized by NYU Langone and the city and state. But there still is tremendous cost associated with operating the site. We generally have a membership fee for everybody. There are desk fees, and there are also bench fees and lab fees. And those are pretty standard. You go to the website, it's in the open. We don't, negotiate or provide specific offers. If cost is an issue, we generally encourage people to apply for our golden tickets, and those are open to everyone. We have a BMS golden ticket that will likely be announcing in the coming weeks. We just finished one with the Economic Development Council, which awarded 3 golden tickets. And essentially the golden tickets is an opportunity to get free lab space and or office and desk care.
Awesome. That's great. That's cool that there's those opportunities. We have a question about your drug discovery platform. For that drug discovery platform that you're working on, how did you manage to bootstrap versus raise capital?
We initially bootstrapped through friends and family. And I'd have to say, if I were to do it again, I would not have done it that way. Because it created this psychological needs that were very, very different. So we were working to make sure that we maintained the financial well-being of our family rather than the financial well-being of the company. And it's a very subtle thing when I say it, but in day-to-day action, rather than thinking about how the business is scaled and taking financial risk, you're thinking about protecting capital, and operate a business very, very differently in that way. When it was clear that this approach wasn't working, We did professionally raise, and that's when we scaled tremendously. We went from just a handful of team members and ballooned within 6 to 9 months to 30 plus people. So I think where you get your capital does psychologically influence the decisions made.
That is, wow, that 100%. I can definitely see that. That's a really good response. Thank you, Dr. Glennis. I know we only have a couple of minutes left, so I really wanted to end our conversation with one of my favorite questions, which is, do you have any words of wisdom, words of just general career advice for us all?
Career advice.
Or life advice?
So I would say career advice is take risk when you're young. Just it's a matter of having confidence in yourself that you will be able to figure things out and take the leap. I would love to see more founders, more entrepreneurs. It's a maddening, rewarding experience, and it's one that is not for the faint at heart, but generally encourage people to take that leap early in life. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, you still have a wonderful experience to fall back on and go back into the market.
I love that. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Glennis, for such an incredible conversation. I think you've all made us big fans of BioLab. We really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.
Oh, same here. Well, thanks for having me again. And you all take care. I'm looking forward to seeing some of you at the end of the month.
Yes, absolutely. So for those of you who were not here in the beginning, Dr. Glennis will be one of the panelists for the symposium on Halloween at the end of this month. So make sure you join us next week for our next Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. I wanted to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, as well as one last huge thank you to Dr. Glennis Mehra for such an incredible conversation. And we will see you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.